Hello, hello, Fed Phoenix fam. So let's do a prison story. I'm trying to use this this like cell phone holder thingy, right? With like a little table thingy to try to so the videos aren't like as kind of all over the place with me like holding it and the camera going everywhere. So trying something new. So hopefully this makes the video quality slightly more tolerable for those who get bothered by the moving of the phone as I'm recording. But anyway, so oh, and by the way, as of Saturday night, I got the letter to the judge asking to get off probation early in the mail. And I looked at the pickup days and times, on the little postal drop thingy, and it said that Monday afternoon, I think, would be the next pickup. So today's Tuesday. This is Tuesday evening. My judge is 45 minutes away in Charleston, West Virginia. So I'm imagining that definitely probably like tomorrow he'll get my letter. Definitely by the end of the week for sure. He'll have read it. So hopefully we'll be hearing something soon in regards to if I'll be getting off paper early or not. So yikes. So anyway, but I wanted to tell y'all a prison story. One that I find particularly entertaining. In retrospect, it wasn't at all entertaining when it happened. And I like to refer to this little incident as the hostage situation because that's what it feels like or felt like. Some of my former co-inmates refer to it as Oilgate, but call it what you want, right? So one thing about Alderson, right, about the prison camp I was at, is the floors are like this weird unfinished, perhaps. Like it's really smooth though, but it's like there's no flooring. It's concrete. And our central air in the summertime would frequently just decide to not work for periods of time. And when this would happen, the unit would become like an oven and the windows don't open. So you would just be hot as crap. Now, if you were fortunate enough to buy yourself a fan off of commissary, and they were just little tiny little desk fans, it was some relief, but whew. But another thing that would happen, right, when the air would go off and the unit would get crazy hot, and sometimes in the wintertime, the units get crazy hot as well, because for whatever reason, the HVAC there is not very well maintained or regulated or whatever. So in the wintertime, you were either going to be freezing or you were going to be burning up, just like in summer, all year round. It was always one extreme or the other, and it wasn't seasonal. There was not a more likely season for the unit to be crazy hot or crazy cold. It just kind of was whatever, which was nuts. But when this would happen, the concrete floors would kind of like sweat, right? And they would become very slippery to the point that the shower shoes that you of course have to buy, which are like Dollar Tree flip-flops and you pay $3 for them. If you try to wear those and go down the hallways or walk around the unit when, to get to the shower and come back to your cube, when the floors were wet or when the floors were like sweating this weird moist oiliness, it would be like walking on ice. And so to the point that some people started calling the shower shoes suicide slides, because wearing them when the floors were wet or the floors were like slippery, moist from whatever, was pretty freaking dangerous, quite frankly. Like more than one person took a good fall from that. So with that in mind, okay, there was this one particular guard, and he was a little guy. And by little guy, I mean very small physically. And I think he wore his Skechers, or I think he wore like Under Armour tennis shoes like the inmates bought or something. He definitely was not wearing like, gripping tactical boots like they're supposed to wear. Heck, most of them just wear Hey Dudes to work. So, it's a camp in the mountains and a satellite camp at that. So, it is what it is, right? But he also was a little man in the sense that he was frequently angry. He never knew what the heck was going on or supposed to be going on. And he loved to just have something to be upset about or whatever. So with that in mind, this guy worked third shift. He worked night shift, which is a whole lot of just doing bed checks in the middle of the night with your flashlight and whatever. And he was also one of those people that if an inmate had to be woke up in the middle of the night, which wasn't terribly uncommon, particularly if you had like a doctor's appointment sometimes, they would literally come like And he was one of those ones that instead of like showing you some level of human dignity, he would just come in your cube and then like simultaneously like flash you with his light really bright in your face and like bang on your bunk and yell your name at the same time. And oh, get ready. You have to be down the hill in an hour, to leave for your appointment. And it was, which was very traumatic for a lot of the women there. Being abruptly woken up in the middle of the night or wee hours in the morning, by a loud noise and a bright light is absolutely terrifying when you're in prison. Particularly if you're a person that has any similar past trauma, like maybe your house was raided. Maybe you had an abusive husband that liked to wake you up in the middle of the night and just beat the crap out of you. And a lot of women in there had this kind of trauma. So the guards who thought it was who would entertain themselves by scaring the bejesus out of people, he was one of those as well. So not a good person in general. So anyhow, all of these things considered, one night the air quit working, right? So the unit, of course, gets crazy hot super fast, but most people are sleeping, so this means they throw their covers off or whatever. Well, the little guy was doing, rounds, walking around the unit, and he slipped and fell. And so when he slipped and fell, instead of coming to the very obvious conclusion that, oh, that's right, the air went off for a while, now it's back on, and so now the floors are weird. Instead of that very obvious conclusion that most reasonable people would have immediately jumped to, he decided that in fact what was happening was some inmates must have lubricated the floor with oil or some sort, And we could buy olive oil on commissary, not that it was great quality or worth the money, but But his theory was that someone had purposely lubricated the floor, knowing that the guards at night would be, walking around the unit, to sabotage them, to try to cause harm to them indirectly. So then, after this guy falls like an idiot, he then proceeds to call the warden, have the warden called at home in the middle of the night, and the warden at the time was not a good person either. And I can tell you stories for days about that, as can anyone who was there under the dictatorship of Gretchen Third Reich Ryle. But anyway, so he falls, and so he calls the warden, and oh my gosh, the inmates have lubricated the floor to try to harm guards, and it worked. I fell. So at this point, all the units in the light are cut on in the middle of the night, which wakes up a few people, and a few people are like, like, what the heck is going on, and we're not getting any explanation. Although the majority were just like, I don't even care what's going on. I'm just going to stay asleep because I know it ain't time for me to get up yet, right? So, because, it's a working camp. So a lot of these people have to be up, some before the sun to go get to their jobs to go work. So a lot of these people are like, I don't care what's going on. Unless the fire alarm's going off, I'm staying in my bunk and I'm trying to get as much sleep as I can, right? So they cut on all the lights. And when we're asking them like, hey, what's going on, or what's this about? It's a whole lot of attitude and, go to the bathroom if you have to go to the bathroom, but otherwise get back in your cube, and we're not answering questions. So then morning finally comes, and we are informed that we cannot leave our unit to go to school or work or anything, I think that first morning, they didn't even let us go down to eat breakfast. They actually had the kitchen send up bag meals. And this went on, the bag meals was literally our breakfast, lunch, and dinner for all 5 days of the hostage situation, which a lot of inmates were fussing about. I guess there's some policy within the Bureau of Prisons that food cannot be used as a punishment. Withholding food, or the type of food you have access to, cannot be a form of punishment. And particularly mass punishment, an entire unit of, over 100 women. So they don't let us leave the unit. They don't turn on the computers. They don't let us go in the TV room. As people are waking up, they're informing them, you can go to the bathroom. You cannot shower. You can go to the bathroom, but you can't shower. And the whole unit is on cube restriction. Mind you, these cubes, the walls are like, probably about 5 feet tall. They don't go to the ceiling. The ceilings are very high, and they don't have doors. So, but cube restriction is when you cannot leave your designated housing cube. So you and your bunkie are just in the thick of it together. without any other option or recourse. We couldn't use the phones, we couldn't use email, we couldn't use the showers, we couldn't go to the TV room. We're whole units on cube restriction, and there will be a later we will be informed, to some degree of what is going on here. So as soon as all the daytime employees start showing up to the prison, they have us systematically, 5 people at a time, so it'd be like one cube, that's 4 people, and then one person from this cube, and then that one person from the other cube, and then 2 more cubes, so in groups of 5 people at a time. They make us go into the showers, and they bring up a bunch of staff to staff this. They make us go in the showers, and we're on 24-hour, like have somebody in the unit making sure that we're staying in our cubes and not accessing any of these amenities we're not supposed to access. Which is crazy because usually you don't, the guards do their walkthroughs for bed checks. They do walkthroughs periodically, but they're never on the unit very much. You know what I mean? But, so anyway, so they have us 5 at a time go into shower stalls, get completely naked, and do the whole lift up your boobs, lift up your arms, squat, cough, bend over, like, these very invasive, completely naked strip searches. They didn't get out the gloves and do cavity searches, but at camp, I don't even think legally they can do that. So anyway, and then after you were strip searched, you were then moved to the phone area, although you couldn't use the phones, to wait to be interrogated individually. They had two people from down the hill, 2 administrative people. I think maybe one was actually, their job was, interrogating inmates and staff. But we were all individually, in turn, interrogated, right? And it was a whole lot of questions about, do you know anything about anyone putting any lubricant on the floor? Have you heard any talk of anyone wanting to harm the guards? And then they went down the rabbit hole of, do you know anything about drugs on the unit? Do you know anyone who does drugs on the unit, who sells drugs on the unit? Just all these ridiculous questions. So, but why? And then from there, after you were 2 at a time questioned, 2 at a time taken from this phone area and then questioned in private offices, then you got moved, almost like little stations, to the horseshoe area, which is this big desk thing in the housing unit that we call the horseshoe because it's shaped like a horseshoe. But then you got moved over there, right? And they're going through the whole unit doing this. Strip searching, wait, interrogation, wait. And while you're waiting at the horseshoe, the reason why you're waiting there is because they have additional staff that are tossing every single cube, searching every single cube, your locker, your cube, your bed, and mostly just tearing up shit and making a mess of things, and just disrespecting the crap out of your personal property, really just because they can. This is a punishment. This is not really serving any actual purpose. And they do this, and they systematically go through the entire, and once your cube has been tossed, then from the horseshoe, you were sent back to your cube, you and your bunkie, to go back to your cube restriction that we're all under. And then we were informed that a guard was harmed, which he wasn't harmed, by the way, due to the intentional sabotage of the floor by the inmates. Here's the thing. If you were asleep at night and you didn't realize that the power had went off and thus the air went off, and so the whole water, the whole concrete condensation slippery thing happened, and then the air came back on. If you weren't aware of that little bit that had happened in the middle of the night, it's quite likely that you or I, that the random inmate was going to bust their butt than a CO who was aware that the air had went off and had to be, somehow turned back on hours later. So, and the lubricated floor was in a hallway in the housing unit. So guards don't go through there very much other than do bed checks. We go up and down them halls all night, going to the bathroom because we're ladies, and a lot of the ladies are of a certain age. And so they get up a lot at night to go to the bathroom. So the likelihood of a guard being injured versus an inmate being injured was almost non-existent. It was far more likely that half a dozen of us would take a fall without realizing, the situation, than a guard would get hurt. So then they bring up, and the people who clean the housing unit, their job is called cottage maintenance. And this term comes from when Alderson first opened, and there were cottages, which currently exist still down the hill. They're not in use, and they have really bad asbestos, and no one's supposed to go in them. However, generally the staff or the prison uses them for storage and makes inmates haul crap in and out of them periodically, even though no human being is supposed to be going in them at all. But those were cottages, so they still, the term cottage maintenance for the people that clean the housing unit stuck when they built the existing 2 housing buildings up the hill where we currently are housed. So cottage maintenance, they bring in like industrial, like degreaser, right? And then all these cottage maintenance people, and some of these people are cottage maintenance because they physically cannot do a lot of other jobs, right? So they have a cottage maintenance job that isn't terribly difficult to accommodate because someone somewhere with some level of authority had showed some level of human compassion and put them in that position. So with that in mind, not in our cubes, but just in the hallways, the common areas, and the horseshoe and all that in the phone area, they literally spray this industrial degreaser cleaner stuff down and are making all the cottage maintenance people come out of their cubes with brooms, like scrubbing brooms, and scrubbing these concrete floors with it. Like Orphan Annie. It looked like a scene from that Orphan Annie show, where they're all like scrubbing the floors, and it's kind of like that. And it was very intensive physical labor. Thank God, that I had the fortune of not being a cottage maintenance member that day. So after this crap, then they have a town hall meeting. Now, town hall meetings in camp mean that your entire unit meets up at the horseshoe, in front of the horseshoe, more, along the housing area. And then behind the horseshoe, because we're not allowed to go behind the horseshoe, staff give us some kind of lecture or speech or announcement. And this is where we're informed that indefinitely we have lost all commissary privileges, all phone privileges, all email privileges as a unit, TV privileges. We will not be going to classes or work, and we are on cube restriction indefinitely. And you could tell the people that were either veterans to the whole incarceration environment, or the people that really had their mind in the right place of, this is just a slice of my life, I'm living in their world. Throw your worst at me. I don't even care because my time here is finite. It has an end. You could tell that's that group of people versus the people that had no real experience with being institutionalized, or the people that were really kind of caught up in the fishbowl and they had made their day-to-day life in prison their life. Because these people were losing their mind. The second group was just losing their minds. I have rights and I have to be able to call my family, and you can't feed us 3 bag meals a day, and you can basically only give us 1 bag meal a day if the kitchen is functioning and producing hot cooked food for 3 meals. You have to at least give us 2 hot cooked food free meals. And they could send them up in the styrofoam containers, right? And so people are wanting paperwork so they can write complaints to regional, and a lot of people wrote what's called a sensitive 10, which is where an inmate writes a BP 10, right? And this goes to the regional office for that prison. Really, it's for a cluster of prisons. And a sensitive 10 means that it's not seen by anybody on the actual prison it came from, right? You'd write a sensitive 10 if you were like sexually assaulted, or if your rights were being violated, and you feared recourse from the administration at the prison you were at, and so you just wanted to get word out to regional without the administration knowing what you had said. Which ironically, nearly every single one of them sensitive 10s not only got ignored by regional, but got sent back through the mailroom. So the warden and the administration were fully aware of who complained and what their exact complaints were, and the fact that they were going to be just disregarded. And so this went on for like 5 days. And after the 5th day, they let us, separately from everyone else on the entire compound, walk down to eat meals. I think some people were able to start going back to work. Like it wasn't like a light switch situation where everything just went back to normal after 5 days. And let me tell you, 5 days of a whole lot of crazy ass uncertainty. Oh, and during this 5 days, they still weren't letting us shower. So on day 3, they finally let us shower, and they were timing us. And 1 6-minute shower per person in groups of 5. so they could monitor, make sure that no one was getting extra time to wash their hair or anything. And back to your cube, And then they said, well, legally, we only have to let you wash your butt every 3 days for 6 minutes. So therefore, that's all you're going to get as far as shower privileges. Oh, and we, of course, also during this time did not have access to the ice machine or the hot shot, which is the hot water machine that we used to like cook food in our cubes and stuff. And some of the women were taking the trash cans out of their cubes, lining them with trash bags, which we're not supposed to have the trash bags, but whatever, and going into the bathroom and using the sink to try to put like hot water in there, and then taking their trash can, like sneaking it into a shower or into a bathroom stall, because we're allowed to use the bathroom, to try to wash up a little bit. Because you got to think, some of these women have been sweating profusely. Some of these women are in menopause. Some of these women are menstruating. And we are literally all day just in our freaking cube. And they were getting in trouble for that. Whew, yeah. You don't get to clean whatever hygiene situation you have going on that probably desperately needs some cleaning. No, that's not part of this whole hostage situation was really just the warden abusing her power to try to dehumanize us as a punishment for something that we didn't even do, that nothing, we consciously, no one did anything, like seriously. And it got to the point where, it didn't even take 2 days in, and people were like, well, someone's got to be the fall guy, right? Pretty much. So they started pointing fingers. They were like, oh, it was the cottage maintenance, the lady in charge of cottage maintenance at the time. They blamed her. They said, well, I think she sometimes puts her perfume oil in the mop water. So even though it wasn't probably intentional, she did it. It's her. She's the one who needs to be punished, not all of us. And it was really crazy watching these people just turn and just blatantly make up lies to try to throw somebody under the bus to make it stop. And this was one of those times, see, the thing is they can't stop you from getting mail and sending mail. Even if you're in like solitary in the SHU somewhere, which my prison didn't even have one of those. They can't stop your right to have communication with the outside world. And the one venue by which they cannot take away from you is mail. So if you already had, because we couldn't get commissary, so you couldn't buy these things at this point. But if you already had like postage stamps and envelopes and paper, which I did, on day one, I was writing my family saying, hey, I don't know how long this is going to go on. This is what's going on. You're probably not going to hear from me for a while, but I will continue to write letters and keep you updated. But just know that even though you're not hearing from me, I'm perfectly fine. Not a big deal. It's just another shenanigan that we have to endure. And then for, oh gosh, weeks, maybe months, we were on what was called commissary restriction. So it was quite a while before we could do commissary at all. And then we were on like a restricted commissary thing, right? Where you could only spend $25 per week or every 2 weeks. And you could only buy items that were on this list of items for people on this level of commissary restriction, right? So like if you need Dove soap because you can't use like the cheap Dial, that's just too bad. I mean, let your skin break out and claw it all off because Dial is your only option right now. We couldn't order any food. We couldn't, even the over-the-counter medication we could order from commissary at this point was a limited list. It was really crazy. Eventually, we got back to the point where we could order normal commissary, but it was quite a while. I want to say it was actually a couple months, but it may have just been several weeks and felt like a couple months. Anyone who was there for that, feel free to chime in if you remember more specifically the time frames here. And it was quite a while before we got access to the hot water machine, the ice machine, the TV room. We're able to make phone calls or use emails. It was just really, really nuts. And honestly, it felt like we were hostages. Like it felt like we were hostages in the prison, right? Because everyone else, you look out the window. If you happen to have a cube with a window, lucky you, right? Because everyone didn't. But you look out the window and everyone else is going about their day. They're going to meals, they're going to pill call, they're living their life, the best you can as an inmate. While we are literally just packed in. Oh, and then during this time too, which was really just insane, the warden, and there are trees on this, this is a very old piece of property, but there are trees on camp that are like super old, Probably if this was not federal, private federal lockdown, land, there probably would have been some laws against tearing down some of these trees because of their historic value and the fact that it was federal land. But none of that applies in prison. So while we're on this crazy 5-day, no end in sight cube restriction hostage situation, we see that the warden is like bringing in the landscaping crew, which were also inmates, of course, supervised by staff and stuff. And they're literally ripping trees out of the yard. The yard is like in the middle of the two housing units, right? So we're watching them like rip up these trees. And the staff are saying, oh, they're doing that so the limited, surveillance cameras they have on camp can get a better look at what you guys are doing. What are you trying to catch us exactly doing? Because the thing the trees mostly hide is the fact that people feed the squirrels when we're not supposed to. So is it really worth tearing up? And then ultimately there were other trees on Hallelujah Hill and all over camp, various places where there were camera blind spots and trees were just torn the heck down. And it was the weirdest, craziest thing I've ever seen in my life because it made zero sense at all. And it was just really just nuts. It was pretty nuts. But so that, my friends, was the hostage situation, better known as Oilgate. And I remember not long after this, one of the Spanish mommies, which is just the term we used for all the Spanish-speaking women, they were the Spanish mommies. And it's not derogatory or even necessarily enduring. It's just kind of a general grouping. But the Spanish mommies, who personally, the majority I absolutely loved, but one of the Spanish mommies, whose English was meh, it was decent, but not, she did something, or a guard had presumed she had done something. It was very minor, and they were kind of overreacting in their chastising of her. And I'll never forget, she's at the horseshoe, and she just starts yelling. She's like, what are you going to do next, huh? What you gonna do to me? You gonna search my ass for the oil? I died. I heard that, and I just was laughing. I couldn't control myself. I had to go to my cube because I was in tears. I thought it was so funny. But that's pretty much what it felt like. Like, oh, any minor misstep, you're going to take us hostage and make us get butterball naked and make us bend over and squat and cough and for the oil, which if someone intentionally sabotaged the floor and poured oil on the floor or rubbed Vaseline into the concrete for shits and giggles at 3 a.m., I don't think they would have hid the evidence up their butt. Especially since this is an item that we are allowed to have. I mean, make it make sense. Crazy. So if you're going to prison, expect Oilgate situations that make no sense, violate all of your rights, your human rights, your prisoner rights, whatever, are just going to get trampled on and kicked around. And you just got to just take it on the chin. Roll with it. And, so to reiterate, this is just a slice of your life. You're going to have to tell yourself that a lot to mentally get through this situation if you're ever in it. But yeah, so that was the hostage situation. That was Oilgate. I know I'm forgetting some of the really just insane details of it all, but yeah, that's the gist of it. So that's one of my lovely prison stories I thought I'd share with you guys tonight. As always, if you like the video, please subscribe if you have not yet. We're up to a little over 90 subscribers, which I'm super excited because once we get to 100, we are 10% of the way to 1,000. And once we get to 1,000, there is potential at some point for me to become monetized and for me to actually have some type of passive income as a result of my YouTube channel, which would be amazing to say the least. In the description will be my YouTube and my YouTube. Welcome to my YouTube. Let me tell you about my YouTube. But will be my Cash App and PayPal if you'd like to donate to the channel. I think at this point, other than, donations being used for, obviously day-to-day necessities if they come up, I definitely will be trying to sock away whatever I can towards the book I'm putting together that I'm writing. Because I'm realizing I'm going to probably have to spend a couple dollars, on getting things formatted and an editor and all that kind of stuff. Obviously I'm going to go super cheap as humanly possible, but it's not probably going to be free like I assumed that it would be. I think I may have overestimated my literary abilities, to be quite honest, as far as doing the whole process, myself. But yeah, and, my email address will be in the description as well. if you would like to contact me for any reason. And also there will be a link to the merch line. So you are part of the Fed Phoenix family. And if you want to represent that, if you want to represent people overcoming their strife, people taking things in stride, if you want to represent the underdog, winning, if you want to represent the unity of oppressed persons, then represent the Fed Phoenix fam. Get you a hoodie or a coffee cup and say it loud and proud. So, good day, God bless. This video is crazy long. It's like 30 minutes already. So, but good day, God bless. And, I would love to hear your feedback. If any of the people I was incarcerated with are subscribed to my channel, which I think a few are, and you remember any other details about the hostage situation, about Oilgate, please feel free to chime in with that. So with that, I bid you adieu.